Okay, well, welcome everyone and hello, welcome back. Welcome if this is the first time that you're here. Very happy to be able to do this. We are probably going to talk about one of my favorite subjects besides solar, right? I know that typically we have this channel to be able to talk about renewable energy and how we can free ourselves from the utility company. But today we're going to talk about one of my most favorite subject, which is money. Yes, money. It's probably one of the things that, really drives every action of our day, the way that we live is how are we going to spend? How do we acquire? Where do we do with our money, right? Money to a lot of us means many different things. And here, what we want to talk about is how do I change my mindset so then that way I can look at money differently, right? Because at the end of the day, money is really just a tool that it can empower our lives, right? It can either give us a lot of stress or it can give us a lot of freedom. So we want to talk about how can we change our mindset so we can look at money as a tool to be able to give us freedom to allow us to live the kind of lives that we want to live, right? How can we use it to empower ourselves? And then how can we use it so then that way we can be in control of the kind of life that we want to look at, right? So simply for today, what we want to talk about is, hey, how do I reset my mind? How do I look back at my last month, right, and see where did I do with my money? What happened with it? Where did it all go, right? Because I'm sure we all feel like this is that money is never enough. No matter how much money we make, it seems like, hey, it's just not enough. Maybe we feel like, we're just underwater. Maybe we feel like, we can't get ourselves ahead. But really, it doesn't matter where you're located. You could use money by resetting your mind as to how you're going to use money and use it as a tool to make your lives better. Now, I do want to preference this that this isn't like, hey, a get rich quick scheme. This isn't something that is like, oh, it's going to instantaneously work right away. And it's not going to be easy, right? It's something that's going to be, it's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take a lot of patience and it's going to take a lot of time in order for you to be able to reset your mind and look at money as a tool to be able to give you the kind of life that you want to live. So the first thing is we want to start off is we want to look at, okay, before we're going to look forward with money, it's like how do we look back, right? Like let's look at some of our main habits that we have when it comes to how are we utilizing our money. We want to look at back at ourselves, okay, what kind of person are we? Right, what kind of life are we living? Because in order for you to look at how can your money work for you, you have to first understand you. Right, we can't look at other people and determine what their lifestyle looks like and try to emulate it. We can't see what makes other people happy and then try to copy it. We have to be able to look at, okay, let's break down, let's look at the kind of person that I am, let's look at what kind of life I want to live and what things I need to do or what steps I need to take in order for me to make money work for me, right? So let's just keep it very simple today, right, team? And let's look back at the last month, right? Let's look at, okay, well, what am I spending my money on? Now, obviously, depending on where you are, depending on where you live in the world, we all have different priorities with our money. We all have different things that we need to do for our money. So we're going to just generalize it for now and look at what are some fixed costs, right? That might be, hey, where you live, right? Your rent or your mortgage. We definitely need to pay for food, of course, right? Depending on whether you have children or not, there might be some cost associated with children. So we want to look at, okay, what are your fixed costs? What are things that you're going to have to pay every single month, no matter what, that is not going to change, right? There might be things like, maybe a cell phone bill, maybe you pay an internet bill, but usually you can narrow it down to maybe 5 or 6 things. For some of us, it might be a little bit more. For some of us, it might be a little bit less as to what are some fixed costs that basically we are going to be spending on a monthly basis. Okay? Now, one of the things that we want to look at again is we want to look at the kind of person that we are and how is our lifestyle affecting the way that our money can work for us. Because, for example, right, team? If let's say I'm just using this number, but let's just say you make $2,500 a month, right? But your lifestyle might be costing you $3,500 or maybe $2,400. It's going to be very hard for you to be able to actually put some money away. Now, trust me, and especially in today's economy, doesn't matter where you are in the world, everybody's feeling the pinch of the economy. Things have gotten more expensive. It seems like inflation has gone through the roof, right? So it might be very difficult for you to be able to save anything, especially in the beginning. And that's why looking at the kind of person that you are is going to be very important, right? Sometimes we have to be able to make sacrifices, or, maybe we have to, struggle a little bit in order for us to, in order for, in the long run, for us to see some benefits. I'll use myself as an example, right? I've been working many, many years. As an adult, I started working, as soon as I was able to, which was 15 or 16 years old, right? I wasn't always the smartest with my money, right? I wasn't always able to, save a good amount of my money. But it wasn't until I decided that within me, what mattered the most was having freedom. Because what money allows you to do, money allows you to, spend time with who you want. Money allows you to maybe pick the kind of career that you want to have. Money allows you to live where you want to live. Money allows you to go about your day in a much more flexible way. And I didn't always have this opportunity. So I needed to look within myself to see, okay, well, what kind of life do I want to live? What is it that really matters to me, right? What are the things that I find important, right? Is it, maybe having material things, or is it me being able to have the flexibility to not have to work a job that I don't like, right? Again, this isn't going to be easy. This isn't going to be something that, it's a get rich quick scheme, nothing like that, right? This is going to be for people that, hey, again, you need time and you need patience on your side, which in today's day and age might be probably one of the most incredible skills that you can have. So you want to look at, okay, well, what are the things that matter to you, right? Now, we'll start off with, okay, you need a roof over your head. So look back, right? And look at what is your current living situation. If you have the ability or the pleasure of sharing your household with somebody else, and maybe you divide, the household necessities, well, one of the things that you should do is, hey, am I living in an area that's too expensive for me? Am I living in, maybe above my means? Typically, if you can, and trust me, again, I understand that in today's economy is very tough. Again, I didn't say this was going to be easy, but basically look at, well, maybe I need to downsize, right? Maybe I need to like not live in the most luxurious areas. Maybe I need to understand that, hey, I need to grind it out. I need to sacrifice a little bit in order for me to be able to, have a better future. I'm going to use myself as an example, right? But I was very fortunate that for a long time I was able to live under my mom's roof, right? Nothing wrong with that. My mom had an additional basement, she had extra space. I helped out with the bills, I helped out paying some of the things at home. But it really did help because I didn't have to take the burden on all by myself of paying for everything for where I lived. And if you can, right, again, decrease how much it costs for you to live, right? By, again, hey, maybe you have a roommate, maybe you have a partner, maybe you're living in, you're living at home. Nothing wrong with that. But on the flip side, you want to maximize how much money you can bring into yourself every single, on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, right? It doesn't mean that you take it easy. Again, depending on how you want to live your life. If you're comfortable having a roommate, if you're comfortable with how things are with your partner, if you're comfortable living with a parent, hey, kudos to you. But I'm just using myself as an example. I always wanted to have the ability to move out on my own. And what I did was I focused on what I could control. So I, worked multiple jobs, 1, 2, 3 jobs, right, if I needed to, in order for me to be able to maximize what my income was, right? So by doing that, I had a very low cost of living because I was living with my mom, and I was able to put away a good portion of the money that I was making on a monthly basis. Now, life is extremely unpredictable, right? Sometimes we don't expect things to happen, right? That's life. If we knew everything that was going to happen, it wouldn't be life, right? Things wouldn't happen unexpectedly. So the way that I look at it is I would try to save up as much money as I possibly can. Again, making sure that you're keeping your lifestyle low, right? I would save as much money as I can because you never know when you're going to need it in the future. So again, if you can control, where you live, try to keep, your housing costs to as low as possible. Again, I know in today's economy, it's very tough. My goal is always, and I'm working towards that. I'm not there yet, but my goal is to be able to have my housing cost or my living expenses be at about 20% or less. It's a very aggressive goal, right? But for me, having the freedom to be able to work where I want, when I want, with who I want means everything to me. Now, for me, going back and using another example is I had a car at the time. I made sure that, and this is going back, feels like forever ago, right? But even when I got and I bought my car, I made sure that I had 50% of my down payment to pay it. My goal was to be able to pay off my car as fast as possible. I'm not a fan of burdening myself with heavy debt, so I wanted to pay off my car as soon as I possibly could. So what I did is, I didn't go for a high-end car or anything, right? I actually remember her. She was a black, I think it was a 2008 Nissan Altima. Her name was Nala. I loved her dearly. Yes, and at the time, I think she was a little less than $14,000. I paid 50% down, and I had her paid off within 18 months. Again, the reason why I did that, right, team, is because I'm not a fan of having debt over my head. I wanted to make sure that I could, give myself the flexibility to be able to save as much money as I possibly could, right? So again, if you can control where you live, if you can control what your expenses are for a car, remember, team, you're not living a luxury life right now, right? This is for you to be able to maximize, exactly, how much how high your expenses are. This is for you to be able to maximize your income. You're gonna have to grind it out. You're gonna have to sacrifice, right? But those are the kind of things that I did because I wanted to be free. Again, at the time I didn't have any kids, right? But you control what you can control. I didn't have an expensive cell phone bill. I know that nowadays the phone bills can get highly expensive, but remember, this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. You're going to have to make gradual changes. You're going to have to make gradual improvements, right? And at the time, I had a job. Well, I had two jobs, right? And basically, I was saving just simply $100 a week. That's all I could afford at the time, right? And for me, that was plenty. I once you figured that, hey, I could live with what $100 less, somehow you're able to make it, right? There's no shame in your game being able to, sacrifice a little, put some money away. I didn't eat out all the time, right? I'm lucky I'm living with mom, so I was able to, have moms cook for me. If you don't have that benefit, if you don't have that luxury, trust me, I totally understand, right? Because maybe you need to find a roommate if needed, right? Again, maybe you need to downsize where you're living. Maybe you need to change your location. Maybe you need to take on an extra job. Maybe you need to change careers, right? So, some of us, and it's gonna vary, right? You're gonna have certain fixed costs, right? That I can think of, again, rent, a car payment. Maybe you have insurance. I was very fortunate that I was able to be under my mom's insurance, so that saved me a ton of money, right? Some of us have student loans that we have to pay for, right? But the whole idea was that I could at least control what I could control, and that was if I could work extra hours, if I could work extra jobs while keeping my expenses low, I would. I was very fortunate that I never got myself into a credit card debt, right? Because for me, I just hate debt. I don't like it. I don't like owing anyone else money. I don't like working extremely hard to then give those money, give that money to the bank. So I was able to keep myself out of credit card debt, right? Now, we all have priorities every month, right? And maybe you need to pick out a few things that are priorities. Again, right, team? This is about sacrifice. And maybe we say, hey, maybe my priority is I need to make rent. I need to pay my car note because by me paying rent and paying my car note, I can make it into work and I have a place to stay. If those two things, and I would just keep it to a minimum, if those two things are a priority, make sure that you focus all on that, right? Anything else that you can try to cut out, right? Again, I understand we need a cell phone bill, we need internet nowadays, but maybe you don't need so many subscriptions. Maybe you don't need to eat out all the time, right? Again, these are not things that are going to make you rich, and we're not here to make you rich. We're here to, give you freedom, right? And maybe by cutting out some of those things, you'll be able to realize that your money can go a little bit further, right? Again, we're not looking for gradual changes. It's not going to happen right away. We're looking at, okay, well, what are some things that I could cut out that at least it keeps more money in my pocket? Maybe it just keeps you from drowning. Maybe it keeps you, above water for now. And that's how I was, right? I didn't have the opportunity that I have today, thank goodness, right? But it all started by me making these small, gradual changes in the way that I looked at money, in the way that I looked at the way that I wanted to live, and what kind of future that I want to have, not just for myself but for my family. Okay, so the other thing that we want to look at is, okay, well, is there a way that I can get an increase on my income, right? Maybe I can ask for a raise. Again, we talked about working multiple jobs, right? Which personally, I'm not a fan of. I'd rather be able to cut down on expenses because, again, I like my freedom. But again, you have to sacrifice. It's all part of it, right? Savings and sacrificing goes together, especially in the beginning. So maybe you have to work extra jobs. Maybe you have to, ask for a raise. One of the biggest things that changed my income was I got into sales. I got into high ticket items, which is solar, right? But I got into something that allowed me to control my income. And because I had put it in my mind that I was going to control my expenses. Now, as my income increases, again, I'm increasing my income, but I'm not increasing my expenses. You'll start to notice that you're able to save more money, right? Look, guys, there is no shame, right? I sacrificed a lot. It was up until I was almost 30 by the time that I was able to afford moving out. And in today's economy, it's tough. I 100% understand. But I was almost 30 years old before I had enough money to move out. And what I did is, before I moved out, is that I had saved up a whole year's worth of rent. I had saved up, some extra emergency fund for myself, right? I had, planned for the worst case scenario because I like to think that things are gonna go bad, right? I automatically assume that things are gonna go bad, that they're not gonna be perfect. So I made sure to save up enough money that if things did go bad, I didn't have to move back in with my mom right away, right? I wanted to show my mom that I'm ready to be a man, and I wanted to make sure that I did it right. So prioritize one or two things that again are fixed costs, right? See where you can cut down on, right? Again, in the beginning it's going to be very tough, team, but anybody can do it because I'm not the smartest person, right? I wasn't given a silver spoon. I was fortunate that I had an incredible family. My mom is everything to me, and I made sure to utilize that in order to help me pave or create a more clear future financially for myself, right? We all have bills, team, right? We can't escape that, right? But look at your calendar. There are certain things that are fixed costs, like I mentioned. When rent's due, when the electric bills due, water bill. Again, this is why, going back to the beginning, if you can share some of those costs with somebody, or maybe stay with family for a little bit, that can help offset that while you're getting your foot, you're getting traction, and you're working hard, because it's important, right? It's not just about cutting your expenses. You got to also be able to work hard, right? But you should be able to plan out as to when you're going to be able to like, hey, start to save a little bit more money, right? Start to be able to change the way that you're going to be living your lifestyle, right? So keep that in mind. Look at some of the fixed costs that you have, right? So that way you're not blindsided, right? You want to make sure that hey, when something is due, you're aware of it. You're cutting down things that you may not need, right? And then, of course, you're planning for the future, right? Again, in the beginning, you're gonna have to sacrifice a lot. You probably won't be able to travel like you want to. You may not be able to, spend lavishly, right? But the whole point is that you can sacrifice a little now so you can live a lot in the future, right? The other thing is that, right, don't forget to budget for fun. Right, I know we're looking at saving, but don't forget to budget for fun, right? Don't be so strict on yourself that it feels like it's a burden. Make sure that you allow some flexibility for you to be able to enjoy yourself, because we don't want this to feel like it's a chore. We don't want this to feel like it's something that, we can't handle, and now we feel like we're miserable, and now we feel like we're not able to live our lives. We want to make sure that we are budgeting some fun, right? So, hey, maybe it happens at the end of the month, maybe it happens at the end of the quarter, but make sure that you're not burdening yourself so much that you're trying to use a credit card or get into credit card debt for fun. You should never have to use a credit card in order to enjoy yourself. So, do make sure that you are planning for some fun. Again, it is going to have to take some sacrifice, right, team? It's not something that you're going to be able to do right away. But again, as you continue to decrease the things that you don't need, right? Again, we have some fixed costs, can't do nothing about that. But as you continue to decrease what your expenses are, you'll actually be able to have more money saved up. Decrease your expenses, be able to increase how much money is coming in every single month, right? By whether it's, working, whether it's working extra jobs, whatever the case might be. And then finally, right, team, saving money and living a more free life, it's not difficult, right? In the beginning, it might feel like it's something that's hard, right? It might feel like it's something that's strenuous, but by first understanding who you are, you'll start to see that you'll be able to make a natural inclination as to, okay, what kind of life do I want to live? What are some of the stresses that I could handle, right? And then live your life according to that, right? Again, money is just a tool that we use it to empower us. Money could be something that either enslaves us or gives us freedom, right? So by you simply making a little bit of a mental change, right? Understanding what your fixed cost, eliminating the excess that you don't need, you can start to see that within a very short time, you'll be able to change the way that money actually works for you. So, this is one of my favorite subjects, right? I want to be able to talk much more about money. I want to be able to engage more with people. I want to be able to help those that maybe have not been able to speak with anyone or gotten this kind of advice, right? Because we all need money, right? But we shouldn't make it a burden, right? To be able to live our lives, right? We want to be able to utilize money to give us freedom, to give more, to live more, and to empower not just ourselves but those around us that we love. So thank you so much for being able to tune in with me. I love talking about money. Please look forward to more of our money reset, right? We all share money, we all need money, and we want to be able to utilize money as a tool to empower us and not to enslave us. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great day.